Welcome to the Maui Pono Network interviews. Today we have Terez Amato with us, who is running for District 11, South Maui State Representative. Terez, nice to have you with us. And to start off, could you just give us a little bit about your background and why you're running? And I know that you've ran several times before for Senate race. If you could just give us a little bit of an overview of that experience also, and why you feel you're qualified to run for state representative.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you guys. And by the way, bravo for an outstanding Earth Day festival. That was a lot of fun. Thank you. So I am running for State House because you deserve a representative who's working for the people, not for corporations or lobbyists. And I grew up here on Maui. I raised my 4 children here as a single parent. So I understand intimately the challenges we face trying to get by on Maui. So I'm running because you deserve a representative who understands those issues and will fight for you. So as you mentioned, yes, I ran for State House previously. I'm sorry, for State Senate previously. However, Tina actually asked me to run for her seat. She let me know she was planning on stepping down, and she asked me to run for her seat with her full blessing and endorsement. So after careful consideration, I mean, for me, it's not about a job. It's about serving my community. So after careful consideration, I realized we need to continue the work that she's begun, and I accepted.
Great. And could you just give a little bit more background into your experience and things that you've actually completed that puts you in a position where you feel you could do the representation that we need here in the county for state rep?
Absolutely. You know, I went to school here. I went to UHMC. I'm basically a Maui girl. I grew up in Kihei and then Wailuku and raised my kids in Kihei. I've been involved with the environmental fight. I've been fighting for stream flow restoration since I was about 19 with my children in tow. And I spent my 20s raising my children, 20s and 30s. And now that they're all grown up and they've all left the nest, I feel called to serve my community. And I think my environmental activism has prepared me, as well as the relationships that I've built over at the state legislature. I'm excited to join a team of progressives on Oahu to really get some great changes done, like a living wage and other important issues. So that's why I feel qualified to run.
Great. Thank you. Asia Iyer will ask the next questions.
Hi, thanks for being with us today. Article 11, Section 1 of the Hawaii State Constitution states, for the benefit of present and future generations, the state and its political subdivisions shall conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and all natural resources, including land, water, air, minerals, and energy sources, and shall promote the development and utilization of these resources in a manner consistent with their conservation and in furtherance of the self-sufficiency of the state. What specific steps do you plan to take to ensure the letter and spirit of this article are upheld by you, especially as it pertains to water?
So our environment is our economy. That's not just a buzzword. I mean, it's true. Everything relies upon our environment. And stream flow is one of the critical, important areas where, you know, our aquatic life in the stream bed has been dramatically undercut and damaged over the years because we've got big landowners in central Maui who get their holdover permits renewed like a blank check because they donate to politicians to keep the status quo. So for me, it's about really ensuring that the public trust doctrine is upheld and even codified with more strength to really ensure that holdover permits are no longer the way of the land, so that the water is used to restore the flow from Mauka to Makai. And then from there, we would go on to, yes, let's provide for our small local farmers so that they can grow food for our community. And then and then we need to provide water for our residents. We've got people that have been on water lists for decades waiting for a water meter. But if we can restore stream flow, then we'll also be able to restore that environment and change the way we fundamentally handle our our permitting process for water permits and large landowners, sorry, excuse me.
Were there any bills or legislation this last session that you felt like were especially effective in meeting that public trust and in just that were really strong environmental bills or legislation?
You know, nothing really jumped out as a real strong win for the environment in this last session. Unfortunately, there were some good social bills. You know, raising the minimum wage was a great start. But as far as the environment goes, I didn't see any real wins for the environment in this last session. Of course, I may have missed something.
No, that's fine. I was wondering if you got something that we didn't. Do you see some bills that you'd like to, I guess you have been behind the scenes trying to get bills passed. Are there things that you just cannot wait to get into office to put them back out on the table? And I guess in addition to that, how do you plan to garner support for that if you are elected and you're one of those few progressives? How do you get the rest of the legislature to get behind you on those bills?
You know, I'm really proud that I've been able to build a lot of relationships on Oahu with current legislators as well as previous ones. And we're really hoping this next session, you know, we've got to work on our social and environmental justice requires that we fix many issues. One of them being pollution on our environment is staggering. The effect is just devastating. So I would like to actually see, we've seen a lot of effort to undercut the solar tax credits and to strip away solar in our community. So for me personally, a big issue to start off with is definitely power and solar energy generation and moving away from burning any fuels for energy.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those answers.
Great. Our next questions will come from Mark Joyner.
Hey, aloha, Terez. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So let me start out by just asking, what do you feel are with the newly expanded district? And I realize it's a small expansion, but what do you feel are the two most pressing issues for District 11 in terms of things that you would like to see done?
You know, there are many issues affecting District 11. But a few of them are the effects of pollution. The cost of living is absolutely exploding, and we have a serious housing crisis here in South Maui. We also need campaign finance reform. Corporate influence and corruption is just hijacking our system. You know, we hear a few stories about the corruption on Oahu. There's a lot more that we simply don't hear about. So that's something I'm looking forward to tackling. Our healthcare and safety net are lacking. We have to improve our education system, and we need more legislation to help disabled people in our community.
What specifically, in terms of environmental degradation, do you see as kind of being the top pressing issues in South Maui?
I'm encouraged to see that the Central Valley is being planted some, but unfortunately, we haven't had any more significant rain. Actually, that cuts both ways. Significant rain on the Central Valley to cause runoff into our reefs and water. But power generation, I mean, we live in South Maui. We should be running off of solar power. So for years ago at the Public Utilities Commission meeting, that they were bragging about this rental parking garage at the airport that you and I can't even park at. You know, every man, woman, and child on Maui could be given a Tesla wall battery or something similar to help stabilize the electric grid and thus move our community to solar. And it would stabilize our grid, and it would also quiet Maui Electric on their grid stability complaints. And such a plan would cover half the price of our island going solar. And if rental car parking can be funded by a single bond issuance, so can solar. I also propose issuing a bond for this, which is paid for by tourists with a rent car fee, which is how they paid for their parking garage. But if tourists can pollute here, then they can most certainly help us clean up our island.
Okay, great.
Mark? Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Terez.
Okay, and next we'll have Ann Keithley.
Hi, Terez.
Hi,
Thanks
Ann.
for being here. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, I know that you've talked about like the influence of offshore corporations exerting influence over campaigning and funding. And I wonder if you feel there's advantages, or maybe if you have some disadvantages of getting our elections publicly funded. Has there been any effort to do that you know of, or any bills?
So I support funding an election as public funding. As you know, it's expensive to run a campaign. We can't do it without contributions.
Mhm.
So public funding, yes. Unfortunately, there just isn't enough public funding to adequately fund a campaign at this point. So I would support more funding for public funding for campaigns so that people don't have to go out and seek donations from corporations or lobbyists. They can focus on the task of representing the people who actually voted them into office. Another thing, you know, with these, when you have lobbyists and corporations giving these big donations, you have to wonder, what do they expect for their money? You know, what do they want in return? As far as my rule goes, I don't accept corporate or lobbyist money. So there are no blank checks. Further, I'm going further. I'm going to install cameras in my office so that there can be no backroom deals. A lobbyist wants to come in and have a meeting? Sure, absolutely. Leave your checkbook at home. I don't want it. And hold on a minute, I've got to turn on the cameras so the community can sit in on the meeting and be aware of what's going on at the Capitol. I think it's absolutely imperative we get rid of backroom deals and provide more transparency.
So have there been any measures that, I mean, I think you mentioned or intimated that backroom deals are going on with bribery will continue to go on, and that we were recently rocked by the scandals of bribery. And are you saying that could still be going on? Is there anything to ensure greater that we can enforce this?
Well, unfortunately, ethics isn't something that can really be taught. I know everyone's required to go to ethics training, but you're either, quite frankly, ethical or you're not.
Right.
So for me, transparency is, well, let's turn on cameras so that the community can be a part of every meeting. I think we need to have greater transparency. And I think that's a simple way, short of everyone having to wear, like a sports car driver, having to wear a suit that has the name of all of their sponsors.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's complicated.
It is.
Right.
So that might be kind of interesting. Let's see who so-and-so is wearing today as their sponsor.
Right. Well, thank you.
Great. Next we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Hi, Terez.
Hey, Bruce.
I'm going to ask you about agriculture and diversifying our agriculture here in Maui, and what you could do if you were elected in order to, right now our agriculture is owned by one company primarily, and we have very little diversified agriculture to hold us over if the boats stop coming. So what would you do in order to change that situation?
You know, first of all, I think we really need to make sure that the Department of Ag has all of its positions fully funded. For too long, Department of Ag has been running on a shoestring budget. And then we need to look at the water permits, because this giant corporation that owns all the land in central Maui, they keep getting these permits. And yet as a matter of fact, a friend mentioned today that they saw a fire down by the landfill. So where's the water going? What are they doing with it? It's my concern that they're just banking the land and the water, not for their agricultural purposes, but so that they can eventually build their homes for their retirement fund that purchased the land. Because the money is in the land. And so to diversify, we have to make sure that we're giving permits for water to small farmers and local growers. You know, anyone in the community should be able to say, hey, I want to grow some food. And yeah, we can do that in our backyard on a small scale. But if someone wants to get out there and toil in the sun and work hard, we have to make it accessible for them to utilize that land and not have it all controlled by a single big corporation.
Thank you. And on that same vein is diversifying our employment opportunities on Maui. particularly in the districts you'd be representing, is heavily involved with tourism. What do you see we can do to diversify to better paying and other forms of employment for Maui?
So many will say that we have too much tourism, and personally, I would kind of agree. I would support a statewide moratorium on new hotel construction. And for providing we have to improve our education. You know, many states already have free community college. Why don't we? I think it's about time that Hawaii provide at least a basic community college education for free. Education is the foundation of our democracy. Benjamin Franklin wrote The General Diffusion of Knowledge because he understood that you cannot have a knowledgeable body electing people if people can't go to school. And that's how we got the foundation for our public school system. So we need a greater investment in local education. And then we need to provide access to the community. And quite honestly, people don't know what they're missing until they're exposed to it. So if we're willing to just provide opportunity and say, hey, look, you can go to school now for whatever you want, whether it be healthcare or agriculture. We've got the method, we've got the funding. Let's help you get there and make your dream reality. It will improve people's quality of life, and it will help diversify our economy.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Terez, I'll ask the next question.
Okay.
It really has to do with home rule versus more state rule. And there's certainly a lot of areas where the state has control of our local resources and issues: education, water, many aspects of our transportation. You know, these things are, tourism to a certain extent. So what is your stance on more of a home rule versus state rule?
Well, the federal government is the big purse string holder, and then it flows to the state and then the county. Surprisingly, most of the control is really held at the county level. We need to have more cooperation between the state and the county. And personally, I would like to see more of the TAT that's generated here in Maui come back to Maui. If the money is generated here, it should be benefiting the people of Maui County. And I will absolutely fight to get our TAT returned to Maui County.
So let me ask a specific question about then education. I guess for many states, the county has control of the school district itself, but here we're one of the few states where it's centralized in one location. What's your perspective on that?
I am open to diversifying our school boards so that Maui County can have control of its own education system. Of course, we have to be careful that it doesn't undermine the unions, because we absolutely have to protect our unionized workers and make sure that collective bargaining agreements are held in place and protected from devastating decisions like the Janus Supreme Court decision. And we saw Governor Ige toss aside the collective bargaining agreement under his emergency proclamation, and then the DOE then began to try and implement mandates like vaccination or firing, and we cannot allow collective bargaining to be undermined at any level. So I support a local school board education and moving some of the funds around, but I would do so very carefully.
Okay, great. Thank you. Asia Iyer will be next.
How do you plan to stay connected with your community and to be able to be a pulse and a representative of them in the State House? What are some specific plans that you have for that?
So specifically, beyond having the cameras in my office, I will be home frequently. It is my intention to be on Maui at least every weekend or more often if there are meetings, etc. And my door will always be open. I'm also planning on hosting what I'm calling an open issues night at the office, where people can come into the office and we'll live stream. It'll be kind of like an open mic, but it's an open issue where you can invite anyone. Do you have an issue you want the community to know about? Come and let's get it out there and let people discuss it and have a conversation.
Thanks. That sounds like a great idea.
Thank you.
Next questioner.
Hey, Mark Journey will be next.
Yeah, aloha again. I have a kind of an interesting question for you. Why is it that you chose to run for the representative position, besides the fact that obviously Tina asked you, versus the state senator position?
Well, primarily Tina asked me. And at the time she was considering a Senate run. And to me, it seemed logical because we needed 2 progressives at the state legislature, not none. So for me, it made sense. I don't need to have the title of senator. I don't care about a title. For me, it's about serving. And if I can best serve my community by serving in a different seat, I'm honored to do that. I'm not running for any personal gain. It's just to serve my community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ann will be next.
Okay, Terez. So my question is, do you have any solutions on a state level for providing affordable housing in Maui?
Yes,
I know you've recognized that this is a real crisis.
It is a very big problem. And so I actually, one of the biggest roadblocks to affordable housing in Hawaii is the lack of available land to build the housing on. So I support using state land and union workers to build affordable housing with the caveat that it is not being built on sensitive cultural or environmental land. But that way we can free up some land, build the affordable housing with union workers. We'll be providing jobs as well as good, stable, affordable housing. I will also support executive branch initiatives to do similar things.
Do you know about the county lands that are available and what the negotiable, whether it would be in perpetuity, or I think there's a concern that they'll move to market prices?
Well, I think any affordable housing must remain affordable in perpetuity. It cannot be this, okay, you keep it out of the housing pool for 20 years and then prices jump from $300,000 to $500 or $1 million. That's not acceptable. It must remain affordable in perpetuity.
Right. And then I think the infrastructure is a big impediment as well.
The state's going to have to invest in these things. That's a simple fact. It's going to have to happen.
Agreed. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Great. Next, we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Yes, I'm going to ask about home rule for counties. One of our biggest problems is not everything being decided on Oahu, being Oahu-centric. What would you propose to create more home rule for the counties?
Well, as we saw with the GMO moratorium initiative, it became a home rule issue. And I think the counties need to have more of a say of what happens in their community, in their backyard, so to speak. I definitely support more home rule with the caveat that it's clean, it's transparent, and it's open so that there aren't, backroom deals are a big deal to me. I bristle to think someone's getting, oh yeah, we're going to go build this subdivision. It's all affordable. But if, just so that you'll help us get it done, we're going to give you a prime lot. That's not okay. So yes to home rule and more control, as long as it's protected from backroom deals.
Thank you. And how would you tackle the homeless situation, not only here, but even more so on Oahu? What would you see as a way of working with that situation?
Absolutely. It's been studied, and providing housing for people reduces the cost, the healthcare cost, and the expense of helping people get help. If you can just provide housing for people, you can stabilize people. You can help them get services, they get stable, they feel better, they get healthier. So for me, providing housing is the foundation for the homeless, for the unsheltered population. We've seen some small potatoes projects happen on Oahu. They've done little tiny houses, and we've probably all seen the little tiny shelters at Haleakala. They're really good, but we need those on a much larger scale.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, Terez. I have another question about water. There's a lot of concern about using our wells, and yet we do not have monitoring wells where we look at the amount of salt water coming in to replace the fresh water that's being taken out. So we're basically moving blind as to what the effect will be on our aquifers. What would you propose in this position as state rep?
Well, you know, it's very simple. As a starting point, we must have stream flow monitors, and the wells must be tested for salinity. We can't just keep pumping. I mean, yes, you know what? I live in South Maui, and some of the biggest water users are the hotels just down the highway from me. So I actually support a tax to tax the hotels at a higher rate because they are excessive water users, to encourage them to ease up, to maybe change their landscaping. You know, yes, we live in Hawaii, but we are in the dry part of the island. We don't need to have big tropical florals everywhere. Let's try some xeriscaping. You know, there are other changes that we can do. We have to protect our water table. I mean, that's all we've got. And without water, we don't have life.
Well, I agree about the need for water here. And I just wanted to find out if our team had any other questions of Terez at this point in time, any other burning questions that you may have. Well, with that, I see a blank here. So Terez, what I'd like you to do is this: anything that we've missed, any important issues that you felt you would like to air to the public, or any other positioning points, now's your time.
Sure, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you guys. It's truly an honor. Some of the other issues I think that are incredibly important are healthcare and our safety net are severely lacking. We must ensure accessible healthcare to the people of Maui. It's absolutely critical. And this includes immediately codifying a reaffirmation of a woman's right to choose. Here in Hawaii, a woman's right to choose was actually codified into law before Roe v. Wade was enacted back in 1970. However, we have seen attacks come against it. We must make sure that that cannot be undermined. And we have to protect a woman's right to choose. Additionally, we have to increase our safety net. I don't know if you're familiar with Quest, but I'm on Quest. That's the state health insurance. It's Medicaid, basically. It's the state Medicaid program. Unfortunately, the way Quest is set up, you cannot have more than $2,000 in your bank account, because if you do, you're immediately expunged from the program and you lose your health insurance. That's simply not okay. People need health insurance. People cannot risk their safety net. You know, what if their car breaks down? Suddenly they have no way to get to work. We have to maintain the safety net. So we have to work to expand those income guidelines, and where those are federally limited, then we need to work to offset those expenses by tax credits for the community member, because no one should go homeless or break the bank because they have a little over $2,000 in their savings account. Healthcare is extremely important. As you know, I had a stroke about 6 years ago, which dramatically changed my life. And if I didn't have health insurance, I don't know what I would have done. I'd probably be dead. So we have to ensure everyone's right to healthcare. And of course, marijuana is medicine. I will say marijuana played a large part in my stroke recovery. And I think it's high time we legalize it. Yes, we have a medical marijuana program, but right now it's being held in the hands of corporations through dispensaries. We need to stop locking people up. We need to allow people to get the medicine they need. And so I'm excited. I don't understand why we haven't passed this yet, but I'm excited to get this done. I'm just glad we're going to have a governor who understands that marijuana legalization is the path forward. And so he won't stand in the way, and he'll help make it happen.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Terez, for this interview, for taking this time, for running for office, because it takes such a commitment to extend yourself out the way that you have for several elections now. And thank you for doing that and for stepping up. Greatly appreciated. Again, this is Terez Amato running for District 11, South Maui State Representative. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.